Garic is the name of my best friend from my elementary school days at Redwood Christian. And I found out after I named my son after him the story of his mother, who named him after a TV anchor named Garic Utley, who was on back in the day. Maybe some remember that. But she came up with his spelling, G-A-R-I-C. So a lot of times it gets confused with Garrett or Gary or whatever. But it's Garic. And Garic has grown up on the radio. Garic Babyman Griffin. When I came to town in 1998 to do Christian radio, and Garic was the only member of our family born here. I jokingly say he's the only one with a Confederate passport, but I hope I can make that joke here. But the funny thing about when nature called for Garic's delivery is I was doing mornings at the time for Way FM, and I did not have the vehicle, but I had the Way FM Jambulance. So I drove Cheryl to Williamson Medical Center saying, "Don't break water in the station vehicle, please." And thankfully we made it. And you may have heard him talking about his experiences with Nelson Mazda and other things that have happened over his career. I like that, his career. And I'm honored to call him son, and am deeply moved and prayerful for what this season is going to mean for him. And I don't know, come on up, sunshine, because I'll just keep blabbering and have a chance to share a little bit. Love you. Too.
Well, I'll start off by explaining the shirt that I'm wearing. I know I was telling a couple people around here the story behind that. This is actually a shirt that my grandmother had made for me, and I call her Shell, so if you hear me refer to Shell, that's what I'm talking about. And she said that these were words that I said too often, and so instead of saying them, to just point at the shirt. So it says, like everybody, dude. She was very crafty and liked to make a lot of different things. As you saw my dad had and my sister's story. I can even remember as a younger kid I had a bunk bed, and she actually created this whole entire thing to turn it into a fort. And it was complete with pockets for snacks for myself and snacks for our dog Shelby at the time. So yeah, she was an amazing grandmother and an amazing person. I just very briefly wanted to mention, I guess, about how she passed, as some of you know. She did take her own life, which is very unfortunate. And I was the one to find her in her home this past Monday. And I can say that the only good thing that God has really shown me through all of this is that I myself in the past have struggled with severe depression and with thoughts of things like that and everything else. And after being the one that found her, after seeing her in that way, and after seeing how all this has played out, I would say there's no way I could ever imagine doing something like that to myself now. So that is, the one, and I do believe it was God's will for me to be the one to find her. It was by pure circumstance. I wasn't even supposed to be the one picking her up that day. And so that is the one positive thing that has come out of all of this. So I said that I call her Shell. So the reason for that is when I was a kid, she didn't want me to call her Grandma because that made her sound old. So she would just be like, "Just call me Michelle, just call me Michelle." And as a kid, I couldn't really pronounce Michelle, I guess, so I just came out as Shell. And so that stuck. And I called her that ever since. Also, I remember as a kid when she lived in California. As I said, she only lived here for a couple of years, about 3 years or so. So I would call her every single Sunday, never miss a Sunday. And would just tell her about my day, tell her about my week, and she would ask all kinds of questions about school and everything else, always asking if we were going to have another snow day. regardless of what the season was.
So true.
So yeah, I remember talking to her for what seemed like hours on the phone every single Sunday as a kid until she did come out here, and then I was able to actually go see her, more than just talking to her once a week, which that was great. And I remember going out to California a few times, flying out there and visiting her. Probably my favorite memory of that is one time, and I think we tried to find a picture of it, but we weren't able to. Is she had dressed up in this, I don't even know, stereotypical like old grandma outfit. She had gotten these ping pong balls to make it look like a giant pearl necklace, and she did this really dramatic makeup and had this super colorful dress with all these flowers and this crazy hat and all this stuff. And me and my dad were going out to California for a time to visit, and that's how she picked me up in the airport. So that was fun. Yeah, and there was even random strangers that were wanting to take selfies with her. At the time, they only had flip phones, but they were still doing that. As we started off with the Law and Order theme song, that was her favorite show. I can remember a lot of times out in California, and then she would come out and visit here for different holidays and different things, sitting there and watching, Law and Order with her, and me always trying to figure out who the bad guy was, but her always being quiet because she'd already seen every episode ever. Yeah, she was a very smart person, all her degrees and everything else. She was one that on those Sunday phone calls, any question or anything like that I would have, she would be able to answer the most random things. And even more recently, anytime I would have any kind of a question or anything like that, or anytime that me or a family member or anybody was sick, she always knew what to do, being a nurse and all of that. She was an amazing chef. She did make some of the best dishes ever, and definitely gonna miss that a lot. And I actually didn't write this down, but I thought of it while I was sitting there. A more recent story that involved her that's kind of funny is my mom's 50th birthday party was not too long ago. It was past March. And so we had to take multiple vehicles and whatnot. So I had to drive her in my car. So the party was at the West Haven Clubhouse, and we ended up fixing the issue, but I guess there was something wrong with my seatbelt in my car at the time, in the passenger seat. We didn't know that yet. So as soon as we got there, she was unable to unbuckle her seatbelt. So she was just kind of stuck there in my car. And she was just like, well, you can just leave me here. I'll just stay here, bring me out some cake or something. And then tell me how the party was. I'm like, no, we're gonna get you out, And so I'm trying to juggle, trying to get her untrapped out of my car, while also helping to carry all this stuff for the party because we've got a limited time that we had paid for to have the room. So I've got to help carry all that stuff in there, and there was all kinds of different people. I think Frank came out there and tried to help out, and Suzette over there with seatbelt cutters, but we didn't want to cut the seatbelt yet, and and eventually I think I had to go into the trunk and grab the tire iron, and and it actually wasn't even me. I wasn't even the one that was able to do it. Lauren was actually the one there that had to go and whack the seatbelt a couple times with a tire iron. Eventually did come unstuck, and she was able to go and enjoy the party. So that was a fun memory there. A good time. I don't know if it was more of a good time for her or for us. But, yeah, all kinds of different stories and memories from the past and from more recently. Over time, we both grew older, and we changed a lot. As a younger kid, definitely being more, I guess, like involved with like your grandmother and that kind of a thing, and then getting older and you're like too cool for that, which I never really was too cool for that. But we always loved each other. We always stayed connected no matter what, whether it was via phone calls or visiting. We may have had a lot of ups and downs in our relationship, but you know, it always ended good, and I can confidently say that no matter what kind of negative experience has ever happened or bad situations or anything like that, I never had to question the fact that she loved me. I always knew that I was loved. Once I got a little older and she had moved out here, instead of calling me Garic, she decided to call me GS for grandson. And as she jokingly said that she wouldn't be able to remember my age, so whatever age I was, it was always GS blank. So lately it was GS 17, as she would always call me. And I mentioned before how I called her Shell. She didn't want to be called your grandma, but once she gave me that nickname, then she decided that I was going to call her GM now, which was kind of funny because she didn't want to be called grandma, but I did, and those names stuck. The GS, fill in the age, and the grandma, GM, and all that. And so she's always going to be the best GM I've ever had, and I'm always going to remember her very fondly. She was very much all about the nicknames, and so, you know, she got to meet a lot of my friends and stuff like that. Like my mom was saying, you know, you would know if she liked you. And I think all my friends, for the most part, that she met, she did genuinely like them. And two of them were lucky enough to get nicknames. One of them is Blake, that's here today, and his nickname was Six because he had what she looked for in every guy, six-pack abs. And my other friend, whose name is actually Richard Gay, and the story behind the nickname is another story for another time. But the nickname that he had that she would call him all the time and refer to him as was Little Dick the Shooter. So that was always fun there. And I remember the first time that she got to meet him, and she was so excited that she was going to meet the infamous Little Dick the Shooter. And it was a good time. But yeah, and like I said, you know, she didn't make it obvious if she liked you or didn't like you, and she definitely liked them, as well as other friends of mine that I had that she got to meet. She loved them, and just as she loved me, and like I said, that was the one thing I never had to really question was her love for me. I knew that was the, if anything was consistent with her, it was the fact that she loved her family. I'm extremely blessed to have had such an amazing woman for a grandmother, and you know, now it seems like it was a brief time that I had her, only 17 years, which I know that's as long as I've lived, so for me I guess that's like a long time, but in the grand scheme of things it's really not. But yeah, so she loved me a lot, and she was always persistent, brave, funny, loving, caring, and so much more. And I'm always going to cherish the happy memories that we shared, and as you saw with the pictures and the different stories that have been shared, there's so many different stories. I'll never forget my awesome GM, Shell. I love you, and I'll never forget how awesome and fun you are. I hope that you're having fun partying with Jesus in heaven right now. You'll be greatly missed by all of us, and I love you.